Hi, today we're going to talk about reading on related studies, which actually covers modules 3 to 5 of our class. And for our objectives, at the end of the presentation, you should be able to 1. Define literature review, 2. Identify the purposes of literature review, and 3. Describe the various characteristics of a literature review. Hart of 2003 defines a literature review as the critical selection and effective evaluation of relevant documents or materials in relation to the research being proposed. This only means that if you want to make a good literature review, it would not be as easy as putting all together references or materials that talk about your particular topic for research. Instead, you as the researcher should be careful and critical in selecting which of these references related to your topic, okay, would be significant to your study. And you can do that by being able to effectively evaluate all these references using an existing rubric, of which I am gladly to share with you eventually. Only in this way would we be able to realize how significant all these relevant documents are to your research topic. Also, you must remember that a literature review is a scholarly paper, meaning to say it follows strict structure of academic writing. Also, it includes current knowledge or current existing body of knowledge, like what is already or generally known about your topic. And it can also be about substantive findings or the results of similar researches in the past, and also some theoretical and methodological contributions to a particular topic. Finally, a literature review is a summary of published sources that heavily relies on secondary data, though later I will be able to explain that literature review is not as simple as a summary. So it contains other important parts. There are two kinds of literature, namely conceptual literature and research literature. Now, conceptual literature are pieces of information that can be obtained from books, journal articles, internet, whether electronic journals or ebooks, newspapers, magazines, conference proceedings, reports, and documentaries coming from both foreign and local sources. This means that all information that you obtain from references that are not a product of research, we call them conceptual literature. On the other hand, research literature are all information that you could get from researches or any investigations, whether as simple as a survey or a poll about a topic, or as large as a thesis or dissertation. Other references include scientific papers like experiments or laboratory reports, both published and unpublished, coming from local and foreign sources. So as long as your information comes from a study or any relevant research, therefore you could call that a research literature. Now, conceptual literature and research literature are terms used in the IMRAD format. However, in the traditional research format, we use the term related literature to mean conceptual literature and related studies to mean research literature. What a literature review is not. One, an annotated bibliography. Though an AB or an annotated bibliography is very much useful in constructing a literature review, the AB itself is not the literature review. Also, though the AB is a summary of a reference, it lacks certain elements necessary to make a good literature review. Second, a list of unrelated sources. Obviously, a literature review comprises of references that are relevant in one way or the other. Most likely, they talk about the same topic. And finally, a literature review is not an argument about the importance of your research. The purpose of a literature review is not to argue on how important your research is, although it can be a purpose to exemplify or emphasize the importance of your research. However, it's not the main point or not even the only point of a literature review. Okay, it can explain the importance but never argue that this is how important the research topic is, therefore you must conduct this study. Okay, here is an example of an annotated bibliography. Notice that it contains two parts, namely the citation, which contains the complete bibliographical or referential citation of the material or source, and the annotation, which is the summary or evaluation of the material. Now let's focus our attention to the annotation. A good annotation consists of four important parts, namely the short summary, the evaluation of the reader, the target audience or readers, and the synthesis. So the short summary is the first two sentences of the annotation. Now the summary talks about what the reference is all about. So in this example, Booker reports of a joint research program about the effects of spraying Agent Orange and other herbicides during the Vietnam War. Now that is the main idea of the reference. Now it can still further be elaborated to the second sentence by emphasizing or explaining other sub-ideas like the extent of Agent Orange exposure, identification of highly contaminated areas, and monitoring migration of dioxins are all sub-ideas that are explained or covered in the reference. Now, the second part of the annotation is the evaluation of the reader. Now, the evaluation means highlighting the message or the impact of the reference, like based on the reader's understanding, what does the writer want to imply or to mean? So, what are some important realizations after reading the material? For example, the author asserts the government is not doing enough to help the Vietnamese people who still suffer from Agent Orange. So that's the author's evaluation or realization on what the overall message is implied based on the reference. Next part is the target audience. So the next sentence would be identifying who would benefit from reading this material or reference. So this is written for people with little prior knowledge of this subject and is easy to understand. So that is the third part, the target audience. And the last part of the annotation is the synthesis. The term synthesis means establishing the relevance or connection between how important your reference is to the research study. So that's how a thesis, a synthesis is made. You make sure you provide a clear relevance of the reference to your research study to make sure that this material is important to be considered as part of your literature review. Now here, it is a useful starting point for writing this paper, and because of its currency, this is a valuable source for my research. So in summary, an annotation consists of the short summary, the evaluation of the reader, the target readers or the beneficiaries of this reading material, and the synthesis or the connection of the reference to the research that you are investigating. Here are some purposes of a literature review that you might want to consider. One is to establish context of the topic or problem. Now, it's your role as the researcher to provide background knowledge or background information about your research topic. And the literature review is the perfect section where you will be doing that. You just make sure that you're getting the information correctly and authentically from legit sources. Also, when you are able to provide a thorough context of the topic, it would mean deeper understanding and clarifying some important concepts that might spark confusion on the part of the readers. The second purpose is to determine the relation or connection of your research with previous research studies to emphasize its importance. Notice that if you are able to chance upon similar studies about your topic, it would mean confidence on your part because you are on the right track. Because many researchers in the past have realized the significance of investigating this particular topic. Therefore, you are confident that your topic is actually important. Thus, you really have to push through with the research. The third purpose is to identify gaps of knowledge. Remember that when you were still looking for a topic for research or a good research problem, you started reading references or sources of information. There, you found gaps of knowledge or information that are missing, whether topics, people, methods, or comparisons. Now, a literature review also can possibly identify gaps of knowledge. So you can do that by making a comprehensive compilation or inclusion of relevant sources. So providing examples based on your references would be able to identify areas where there are gaps of knowledge. So you can actually emphasize that in the synthesis of your literature. Number four is to familiarize with some technical terms in research as well as jargons of the research topic. Of course, when you read relevant researches by previous researchers, there is a high probability that you will be exposed to various technical terms in research, like terms in research design, sampling techniques, the ways to analyze data, even the instruments, right? So these are some technical terms of which can be very handy on your end, okay? And some jargons about your research topic. Again, it's about the background information about your topic. Now, the good thing about these technical terms is it can provide you a guide as to how the research topic could be best conducted. All right. So that leads us to the purpose number 5. It will give you insights on how the research can be best conducted with the aid of similar researches. Again, if you are able to chance upon similar researches, then you might want to check on their research questions. Do you have the same research questions, or do they have other research questions which you might find useful too in your study because you have similar research, right? Or what about the theory? What theory did they use if it's a quantitative research? Or what about the conceptual framework? How did they see the variables interacting with one another? What about the research design? How did they plan to conduct the research? Okay, or what about the findings? What did they actually found? And finally, what are some recommendations? So these are important areas that will help you to formulate your research plan or methodology in the next chapter if you're able to chance upon similar researches, okay, about your topic. Finally, here are the characteristics of a good literature review. Number one, it must be updated, meaning all the references or sources you will include in your LR should be at least 10 years old, especially all the research references. However, if you will define terms, include a theory or some descriptions of concepts, and they were formulated as late as 10 years, then you can still consider putting them in the LR. However, if there are newer versions of these definitions or descriptions or theories, much better to use them. Number two, it must be organized around your thesis statements or research questions. Since we're using the IMRAD format in the LR or literature review, so it has a different way on how to organize or arrange the sources to form a good literature review. Because in traditional research, the RRL or the Review of Related Literature and Studies, which is a separate chapter, is actually constructed as containing these sections. The first section is related literature, followed by the second section, which is the related studies. Remember that the related literature is your conceptual literature in IMRAD. Okay, now in the related literature, of course, it's further divided into three parts. The related literature that are foreign literature, meaning the sources coming from abroad, and local literature, sources that are coming from the Philippines. And the last one is the synthesis, so the connection or relevance of these foreign and local related literature. The same goes to the second section, which is the related studies. Okay, so foreign related studies, and then local related studies, and then synthesis. So that's for the traditional. However, for the IMRAD approach, now it's up to the writer on how to best construct the literature review. It can be problem cause solution, cause and effect, thematic, or topical, or inductive or deductive. It depends, okay? There is freedom in organizing your literature review as long as you are able to satisfy the purposes, the characteristics, and of course, the goal of your literature review. Number three, of course, it must use synthesis, okay? So synthesis, we have already learned that it connects, okay, or establishes the relevance of your um, references. Remember, all these references should be, okay, related to your research topic. I mean, all these references combined should be synthesized, okay, to form the connection of these to the research topic. All right. And the assumption is a good literature review is unbiased and objective, meaning to say you should be getting references not from biased writers or subjective authors. So a good way to evaluate that is by using a particular rubric, which I will present the next time. Also, number five, it must identify areas of controversy or research gaps. Now, the good thing about research gaps is it can excite the readers of your literature review to formulate new questions or problems for further research, which is the sixth one. Okay, so if you're able to identify research gaps, okay, then it will encourage future researches by the readers. All right. Do you have any questions? That will be all for today. Thank you so much and have a great day. Bye-bye.